There's not been this experience of understanding the importance of boundaries and how that affects one's sense of understanding and one's sense of autonomy. If that's not really at the kind of the foundation of one's development, then you're kind of flying somewhat blind in a relationship as an adult of, where do I begin and where do I end, and what are the ends of my relationship.
Welcome to Every Part of Us. We are two psychologists named Ruth from opposite sides of the world who are passionate about schema couples therapy.
This model provides a powerful and unique toolkit to help therapists work with complexity in couples. Today's episode will be really looking at how do we help couples where there's a pattern of enmeshment between them. Often we can feel this in the therapy room in terms of the red flags that are right in front of us. For example, when one partner might finish the other one's sentences, or one partner may assume that they know what the other one's thinking and experiencing. So how do we help partners to see what's going on in these moments, to understand and break free? Today we're going to be speaking to expert in the field, Jeff Conway, about how to help couples with enmeshment in their dynamic, and he'll be sharing valuable insights and tips as to what to do.
Jeff Conway has written and speaks and runs supervision groups on enmeshment. So really specialises in that area of both enmeshment and undeveloped self. And maybe just as we begin, Jeff, I'll remind people, what is enmeshment? Well, enmeshment is that really excessive emotional involvement and closeness with someone. It can be a parent, often then moves into a partner, at the expense of your own individuation or your own normal social development. And it often has a really strong belief within it that I can't survive without the other, that I'm sort of stuck close to them, or I'm going to be smothered by them or fused in a way that means there's not much of an I in my sense of self. Jeff, would you agree with that? Is there anything you want to add to that understanding of enmeshment, and particularly as we think about couples?
That's a great description. I actually think it's a really good definition of enmeshment. What I wanted to add, and it's in how you stated it, Ruth, but unlike some of the schemas or patterns that have all of which have definitions, this one has a clear interpersonal part of it and an interpersonal part of it. It has a relational part and an intrapsychic part. The interpersonal part is this kind of over focus on the other in order to avoid catastrophe for that other person. That's the idea that something terrible could happen. And that's sort of how one tends to view the other. And then how one views themselves or oneself is there's a hollowness, an emptiness, confusion, and anxiety. And they both kind of feed on each other. The tendency to be over-focused on the other sort of perpetuates the emptiness within oneself. This is something I'm at and I think is true. And the emptiness in oneself perpetuates the tendency to focus on the other, because I think there's a strong tendency to sort of define the self based on my attention on the other, because of that sense of hollowness or emptiness or confusion. So I think it's, we say enmeshment, but and when we think of enmeshment, we think of, towards others, but there's also an aspect of it that's really important, that's about the self and one's relationship with the self.
Yeah, and I guess if there's a real struggle with who am I, and how do I define myself, or I define myself in terms of you, that must be so tricky to understand boundaries, right, in a couple.
Absolutely. I think that's that's a very, I think, common experience. I actually think it's universal experience of confusion of where are the boundaries, or even a consciousness of boundaries. I think that someone who has a tendency towards enmeshment grew up where the safety around boundaries was not clear. There was a certain lack of clarity and consistency of the boundary between the parent and the child, where the child is the one given care and the parent is the one who's the caregiver. And yet that gets blended sometimes. Sometimes it switches where it seems like the child needs to be the caregiver instead of the one who's being taken care of. And that, I think, really deepens this experience of enmeshment, that it's sort of unclear, what my role is, whether I'm a child, when I actually am a child, and then fast forward to when I'm adult and in relationship, what is my role? What are the true boundaries that define my role, really in anything, but most importantly in a primary relationship, because that's the most consistent, most intense, most complex kind of relationship. And if there's not been this experience of understanding the importance of boundaries and how that uh, affects one's sense of understanding and one's sense of autonomy, if that's not really at the kind of the foundation of one's development, then you're kind of flying somewhat blind in a relationship as an adult of, where do I begin and where do I end, and what are the ends of my relationship? Am I this person's primary partner, but am I also their parent sometimes? Am I also their therapist? Am I also their job coach? And vice versa. Does it go both ways? And that lack of clarity often makes it very difficult for someone to be the partner that they want to be, and the partner I think the other person in the relationship also deeply wants and needs.
So it's a complex thing to understand, and certainly, Jeff, I've found clinically, enmeshment is something often people don't know is one of their schemas, that they don't necessarily have that. They just say, well, I'm just really close to my mum and I'm a really empathic person. Like, they're not necessarily presenting and saying I'm enmeshed, but
Yeah.
perhaps with couples, you're going to start to see some trouble brewing, right? Where there's either perhaps an intrusive parent who isn't really happy to let go of their adult child, and also maybe there's some issues brewing in the couple dynamic where they're trying to have a sense of, as you say, separateness and togetherness, and navigating that is so complex. What are some of those issues that come up when someone in a partnership is enmeshed and can't really even perhaps understand the ends of themselves, therefore maybe find it very hard to understand the other?
Yeah. Well, Kurt, I think it's really true that deciphering enmeshment as a possible theme or pattern for someone individually can be difficult. And for one of the reasons being what you stated, that there's a kind of maybe protectiveness, or there's a protective mode towards the parents, don't want to expose anything that's, unbecoming about the parent. That's a very common reason. It becomes more easily apparent in a couple's relationship, because that's where this pattern can be most strongly activated, and sort of the dark side of the pattern can be most apparent. Like in the definition itself, some of those words are precisely the words people say in couple session, that I'm feeling swallowed up, I'm feeling smothered, I'm feeling like I have no space, I'm feeling trapped, I don't have choices. Like those are very, they rarely come in and say, hey, I'm codependent or I'm enmeshed, but the experience of themselves in the relationship and of the relation itself feels like stuck, trapped, smothering, no choices, like backed into a corner, that kind of thing. And they feel like as if there's no answer other than, sometimes coming to a therapist and say, I don't know what's going on, but I help me, please, kind of thing. Either one or both.
So real need to, be understood in a very authentic way by their partners. And I guess, feel freedom and feel autonomy and really deep needs. And
Yeah.
I was wondering, how, Jeff, you suggest with couples, well, how couples really discern what is sort of healthy intimacy and opening up versus sort of we're quite enmeshed with each other here.
Yeah. Well, I just want to hit on the first thing you said that seems really important is the primary task and one of the primary joys of an intimate relationship, primary relationship is the ongoing understanding of the other and the ongoing experience of being understood. And that gets, I think, very constricted and reduced down through the frame of enmeshment, because it's all of a sudden, it's the person is seen often primarily in terms of, what they need from me, what am I supposed to do for them? As opposed to all the complexities that make them them. That they're on the individual, the other partner is on their own journey of understanding, self-understanding them, understanding themselves and understanding you as the partner. But there's so much more to any individual than what they need from the other. But that gets so over-indexed by a partner that this is who they are. And it ends up, you know, leading to often very confusing experiences and frustrating experiences. One of the saddest aspects of people who trend towards enmeshment is that they actually are very often very caring, empathic people. And that's sort of the irony of it is, I think in part because of their empathy, they may have been sort of co-opted by a parent to sort of be parental or a caregiver long before they were really able to be a caregiver. And so they they have this ability to understand, but their ability has been put within this little frame of how they then can see the other. And I'm sure both of you and other couples therapists can relate any number of stories about couples who trend towards enmeshment, sort of seeing each other and being so certain of what they see and what they know, and sort of behaving accordingly without even checking it out. Is this how you're feeling right now? I'm actually thinking of a couple examples right now. If I just share, they're kind of simple, commonplace kind of stories, but I'm thinking of a couple where they were in a social environment, and they were separate. One was talking with some people over here, and the other one was by himself over there. And the one was looking at the husband and seeing him over there by himself, just looking around, and he immediately told the story that, oh, my husband is by himself. He doesn't know how to interact with people. I know he tends to be socially anxious. I better go over there and help him and bring him into the group, because that's he's feeling left out. I don't want him to feel left out. So feeling this kind of empathy, and also feeling like a little frustration, because it's like I don't really want to do this. I'm having this conversation here, and now I feel like I've got this obligation over there to them, but I think he needs me. And then he brings the husband in, and they get into a conversation as more of a group, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the evening, the husband said to the one who the original husband came up to and said, I don't know why you did that. I was actually having a good time looking around. It was kind of noisy. It was hard to hear. I was happy to sort of watch everything. And now it felt kind of awkward, because it was like stressful trying to hear what everyone was talking about. And the original husband was like so certain that this is what he needed and this is what he did. And it was sort of a true effort and futility, because he totally misread what was needed there. And if anything was needed, which in this example, really nothing was needed, but this is the kind of stuff that happens so often, where you assume understanding and then behave based on the understanding, when you really are misreading this person that you know are living with, know so well, have years with, etc.
That's a really lovely example, Jeff, isn't it, of
Yeah.
the schema getting activated. And then I go into my automatic pilot. I go into my rescuing mode or my looking after mode, which I learned when typically when I was very young. And when you're a little
Hmm.
person and that is
Yeah.
programming, and maybe your attachment depends on it. Maybe I have to make sure mum's okay or dad's okay, or that person. It's just always my job to be that little helper. But then now as an adult, it's hard to de-roll. It's hard to get out of that automatic pilot. And I'm curious, how do you help these people, Jeff?
I so many ways. Um, so you kind of name a category, and I could speak to it, but I'll say in terms of psychoeducation, I feel like that's an important piece is to give an alternative version of what a close relationship could look at. Like, and oftentimes they're attentive to that, the couples I work with, because um, at least one of them, oftentimes both of them, know what's currently going on isn't really working. So they're often willing to at least listen, if not, proceed in other possible directions that could, allow for better understanding and for more autonomy. So I'll give it, example in a secure relationship. There's a heightened focus on understanding each other in terms of what wants, needs, feelings, and also a clear understanding that along underneath that category of needs is to be autonomous, but it doesn't mean separate from the other. It means that we both can explore individually and together. We both can make choices individually and what we want to choose as a couple, the kind of life we want to create, and that understanding is the constant kind of guiding force of our commitment and our way of bonding to each other. And this is fairly basic, and maybe some people who I say this to have heard versions of it before, but sometimes they do react to it like as if for the first time, sometimes very receptively, sometimes, with anxiety and even a want to reject it, which is understandable too, which goes to another way that I work with people. As I said, I'm schema therapist. I do couples work, largely informed by a way of thinking about couples in terms of schemas and modes. And so I consider that they might be operating in default modes that are not that they're healthy. It's not their healthy adult. For instance, a surrender mode that, I basically have to give in to my compulsion to attend to you and to care for you, and that is really the definition of my role as a partner that doesn't allow room for other complexity in my way of being with you and allowing you to be with me. So I will do mode work with an individual, sometimes both individuals in the session, looking at, as I said before, a surrender mode that gives into the enmeshment, and a healthy adult where, advocates for a more dynamic, a more autonomous, a more deeper understanding way of being with each other, and have them sort of experience both both experiences and sort of decide for themselves how that actually feels on an emotional level. Empathic confrontation is a really sharp tool in our toolbox, and I often find myself uh, expressing this empathic confrontation and saying that it makes sense that they relate to each other in the way that they relate, because what they observed and the kinds of roles they were put in growing up were really about attending to the other, and that actually was the relationship. Even though, and this is something I can use, is they can say that even though they were in this role of being like a surrogate, spouse, they felt very much constricted at times. At times they felt very special. It really moved along a spectrum of experiences of that, but often they didn't feel good about it, especially as they got older and wanted to spread their wings more. But that was the internalized working model of a relationship.
So what does Jeff mean by empathic confrontation? This is a schema therapy tool where the therapist feeds back an aspect of the client's off-putting behavior and names it but in a very compassionate way. So the therapist creates a very powerful bond because they can give some authentic feedback in a way the client might not receive in the outside world, but is coming from a very loving, good intention place, and highlights it's a part of the client that is behaving in this way, but the therapist also sees that the client's vulnerability and their healthy adult self.
And so they want a deeper attachment, but what they have to work from is something that was faulty for reasons that we could go into and have gone into uh, uh, for a long time. But what they want is actually something deeper that we want to explore more together. And again, that's the leverage of this is why you're here with me, trying to address it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's helpful to understand some of the ways of looking at and approaches you can use within schema work. I was wondering also about, because we're thinking a little bit about, in your example, a couple's relationship with one another and those assumptions they put onto the other, potentially with the enmeshment sort of schema. And I was wondering a bit about when you've got a person outside of the dynamic, coming into, and there's an investment in that person, and that person sort of feeding in to the enmeshment. And quite typically, in my experience, mother-in-laws, or mothers, and it can be quite complex in terms of these attachments, can't it? I mean, do you have any thoughts about how you manage those?
Yeah. Well, I think if I had to select like two people who can be most activating for someone in a relationship, it would be the person they're in a relationship with, because the person we're in the relationship is also the most activating because they're the so important to us. We spent so much time together. We have such a variety of experiences together. There's a closeness that's really unusual to all their other relationships. So whether it's this enmeshment pattern or some other pattern, it's likely to be if it exists in the person, it's likely to be activated in relationship to that primary partner. And then the other person is sort of what you alluded to, and that is kind of the person who was instrumental in engendering the schema in the first place. They're like ground zero of this in this schema or this pattern development. The enmeshment schema in this case, and so because that was in the context of that early relationship with all those interactions and the way in which that parent either ignored or disallowed boundaries, et cetera, that person, it only stands to reason, would be the kind of person that would be very activating when the person's an adult. So that's a very common dynamic where a person feels very activated to enmesh and overly care for their partner and to feel that pull towards that parent. So just to use, what you're saying, let's say it's a husband and wife, and the husband is um, feeling very drawn to take care of the mother. Let's say if it was the mother who helped conjure or was primary in conjuring the enmeshment experience, they're very preoccupied. They spend a lot of time. All the concerns of the mother is something that they bring in, and sometimes they bring into the whole relationship, not just for the husband but for the wife. So it sort of be like it's kind of a crowding out of the primary relationship because either consciously or literally in some cases that mother in this example is in the relationship with them. And what I often find happens is that in relationship with the wife, then I find that that person is in another kind of autonomy impaired schema, and that is the other side of enmeshment with is dependence, the dependency and competence pattern. And I see it often work that I'm so involved, thinking, working with, talking to, spending time with my mother, handling this, that, and the other, that I'm spent, I'm exhausted. And so I sort of need you to sort of buoy me up because I've been so exhausted with all my efforts with my mother, which in some ways the husband can understand the unfairness of that and the deprivation that comes for that for the husband. Sometimes they don't see it and they don't see it right away, but certainly the wife feels it, and in this example, feels terribly deprived and feels like and unless and sometimes it is very much because of it, they have an enmeshment pattern. They may be super like caregiving of the husband at the expense of the wife's own autonomy and her own understanding, and also just feeling really uh, deprived. So that's a very common experience. And I want to say too, sometimes, the person, like let's say it was a parent, like the mother, that might not be a situation in someone's adult life. Like maybe the parent is deceased, or they live far away, or maybe that parent has changed in their own work, and so they've learned different boundaries. But for various reasons, that may not be an issue, but it still could be playing out with someone else. Like if that parent isn't available, isn't around, it isn't intruding, then there may be someone else they're letting in. Now, with some of the people I've worked with, someone having an affair with someone could also be an expression of enmeshment with that person that can also serve another purpose. Whereas if I'm enmeshed with you, the person I'm having an affair with, and enmeshed with my partner, um, there's less of an opportunity of me being smothered by both, because I'm sort of running between the both of you, which is not, I'm putting conscious words to something I don't think is a conscious experience. And it resonates with some people when we conceptualize it together, and it definitely doesn't resonate and doesn't fit for others. But I do think that is a phenomenon in some couples with enmeshment as a pattern, and there's a third, and that third may not actually be the person's parent. Does that make sense?
Well, Jeff, I love the ideas and the concepts, but let's see it in practice. Let's maybe do a role play and hear how you would work with a couple. Perhaps I can be the couple at the party. We could be the couple at the party you mentioned earlier, and I can be that one who looks over to the husband and just knows what he needs instantly. Should we try it?
Yeah, that sounds great. For the purposes of clarity, I'm going to call you Holt and I'm going to call you Ruth. Okay, so let's do this. Holt, so you told me the story, and I got a little perspective from Ruth about the same experience. I got very somewhat, at least somewhat different experiences. Some of it matched up, some of it really didn't. But what I'd like to do is really slow down to the experience of you at the party, seeing Ruth off to the side, that he was by himself, he wasn't interacting. What went on inside of you? What
Oh,
went
my heart just
inside of
broke.
you?
I mean, I kind of almost couldn't stand it seeing him over there. I know how hard it can be for him in those moments. And I just thought I almost couldn't listen to what anyone was saying. I just had to go over. Yeah.
So you like your heart just broke, and you felt like, oh, I've just got to go to him. Your heart was breaking. There's like, I must go to him. Was there anything else? Was that's really important that you were really feeling very
Yeah,
sad for
well,
him.
I was just so focused on getting over, I guess maybe there's a bit of frustration because often I end up having to, look after him at parties but really, I mean, it's mostly I just wanna I just couldn't really even focus until I was certain he's okay.
Right, right. So it was really a lot of like feeling compassion for him and thinking he really needs some help from you, tinged with some frustration, but it was more like, wow, my heart's breaking. He's really
Yeah.
suffering all by himself.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly, all by himself, and yeah, I just don't want that for him. Yeah.
okay, okay. Let's just take a breath, take that in. It's just really seeing him suffering,
Mm,
heartbreaking, some
yeah.
frustration. Yeah. Now, Ruth, I want to turn to you. So when Holt came up to you and brought you over to the group and started chatting, what was this internal experience like for you?
Mm, I mean, I can, yeah. I mean, I can hear Holt, oh, cares. It's coming from a place of care, but that was not my experience at all, Jeff. I mean, I was actually having a really nice time. I was looking at the views. I was really enjoying the moment. I really, I was very at peace. I really didn't feel I wanted to go and join this other group. So yeah, it was a bit frustrating, maybe. I mean, I could see Holt wants good thing, is trying to help, but it's a bit annoying that Holt assumes, you
Yeah,
know, knows me.
yeah. Yeah, so there's this experience of feeling at peace, like I'm good here. Maybe
Yes.
not even thinking about how you were feeling. You just seem perfectly comfortable. And then Holt comes up to you and brings you along, and it's sort of like there's a thought like, well, I think he means well, but
Yes.
I'm feeling a little annoyed because I'm
Yeah.
actually at peace.
It's not my, yeah, I'm fine. I'm having a nice time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a nice time. And this is like as much as you feel like it's well meant,
Yeah.
his intention, his behavior, it's like, I'm okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's just stop and breathe that in for a moment. Yeah. Now, I know this isn't the first time you've heard that because I know there was a bit of a argument on the way home from the party, but what's it like hearing it now that um, what felt like a heartbreaking experience of Ruth was actually Ruth making a nice experience and feeling at peace. What was it like? What's it like hearing that as you were feeling so bad?
Well, I, I don't know. That doesn't really make a lot of sense because I know that so often Ruth struggles at parties. She's really just
Mhm.
I, yeah at peace. I'm not sure about that. Maybe are you just trying to make me feel better, or I don't know that. Yeah.
It's like it's really like yeah, I hear her saying it, but I just can't really believe it. Like, is she just saying that to make me feel good? Yeah, right. Mm,
Yeah, I know
mm.
you struggle. I know it's hard for you. I just know that. I just know it inside me.
Right. And I just hold on one second. When Holt says, I know you struggle, I know this about you, what goes on within you?
Well, now I'm just feeling quite smothered, to be honest. I mean, I'm having this whole view put on me of me who I'm supposed to be. I'm sorry, Holt. This is not me. You can't go around rescuing me all the time. I'm
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so I'm not sure of Ruth saying that is reassuring you. Maybe a little bit, or maybe it's more vexing that Ruth is saying that. I just want to suggest another piece that is we can chew on another time. But as we've talked about before, Holt, you had a parent, you had a father who you often had to anticipate, what he needed. He had very big mood swings. There were times he would be recovering from drinking or actively drunk, and so there's this way you had to anticipate how he was and sort of act accordingly. And I wanted to suggest that that ability or that apparent ability to predict and behave accordingly can sometimes get out of hand and maybe lead you to conclusions that, in the case of Ruth, mislead you and disables you from really understanding, more complexity about Ruth. That, yeah, sometimes she feels uncomfortable at parties, and sometimes she feels perfectly fine at parties, and maybe 100 other experiences about parties. That when you've had that early experience, I'm wondering if that can shadow how you experience Ruth at times.
Well, just as you said that about dad, I, had lots of pictures and images, yeah, of all of that stuff. And I could just feel the same. It just gripped me. Like I just go into
Yeah,
panic. I just have to do, whatever I can to
yeah,
make dad okay. And maybe
yeah,
there's a bit of overlap there. I hadn't, I guess, yeah, I guess there's something
yeah.
going on, but I just get confused because it's so strong, Jeff. I just feel like I know it. I just know it, and I know she's sort of saying
Sure.
she's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It makes total sense that it really feels as though I know it as much as I know the sky is blue and the grass is green.
mm,
Yeah, right. And I really felt even the little tinge of what seemed to me like a tinge of distress when you were referencing your father and the panic you would feel. That's very powerful. Very powerful. Yeah,
yeah. And I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help.
exactly. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think sometimes help was to do something for the other person, for your father. And sometimes that's the case with Ruth too. And what maybe is a bit of a learning curve is sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's to let Ruth be, also to check in with Ruth, have an actual back and forth about what's going on with her. And that's the part that did not get reinforced for very good reasons, for like emergency reasons, did not get reinforced in your early life. And this may be a bit of I think it is a bit of a learning curve of how to experience Ruth through a wider angle. That's more than helping. It's more about understanding.
Wow, well, I don't know
Yeah.
if I know how to do that. Mm.
Yeah, it takes some time. It takes some time. Yeah. I just to pause, just Ruth, how are you feeling right now as I was talking to Holt? What's going on inside you?
Really sad for Holt. Holt, I
Yeah.
just realize how it
Mm,
felt, to
mhm.
feel so responsible for your dad.
Yeah.
But I care about you and don't need to do that for me. You can be you. You know.
Yeah, but sometimes
Yeah.
you really struggle, and I don't know. Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It
just
is a struggle. It is a struggle, but did you take in that Ruth felt really sad for you? You felt really sad hearing that, the panic that you felt and how that informs how you are with Ruth and maybe others as well. Did you hear the sadness that she said?
now that you remind me, yeah, 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 I did, and yeah, it's just hard to hold on to. I don't know. Yeah,
It takes time. It takes time.
yeah.
Um, but I'm glad we're having this conversation because this is so important to really all primary relationships, but yours as well, of course, is how do we deepen and broaden our understanding of each other? That's more than about meeting needs and helping each other. Those are super important, and there's so much more.
Wow. We'll pause there. Well, just Jeff, I wanted to mention, playing that enmeshed partner. One thing that really stood out to me is the way that you did slow us down, kind of attune to our experience in a, it was abbreviated because it was a role play, but actually in therapy, to be attuned to in a way that perhaps I've not been attuned to as a little, regulator of others.
Yeah.
You modeled to me, I think, that slowing and widening of the lens as you were talking to me about slowing and widening. So that was really powerful in the way you did that, Jeff. Well, if you
Oh,
want to
thank
hear
you.
more about Jeff's work, we'll link to his training and information at the end of the show notes.